All right, welcome back to another episode of Cloud Talk. It is January 28th. That means we are less than a week away, or a little bit more than a week away from the Super Bowl, but less than a week away before Daniel and I arrive in Super Bowl City. So today we are talking collaboration, the key to digital disruption. And as always, I'm Brian Fanzo, better known as iSocial Fans on the Twitters. Joined every week to a guy that looks like he has new headphones on today. We'll have to get the story on that. Mr. Daniel Newman, how are you today, Daniel?
I'm doing great, Brian. I actually am. I'm borrowing my daughter's beautiful, sparkly blue Beats headphones today. And I'm actually in I'm in my office, but it's been completely redone. So I went out to San Francisco last week. I spent a little time with our friends at SAP and also some friends at HP. And I came back and my office had new carpet, new paint. It had been cleaned out. And now I'm pretty much sure that I have all these echo issues. So I'm like, I need a better pair of headphones. So I went to my daughter's room and I stole her Beats because we have entered the age, Brian, where our kids have better technology than we do.
Right. It used to be that the office had better technology than our house. Now it's that our kids actually are having better technology and probably know how to use it better. My daughter grabbed, the Snapchat filters. She calls that Snapchat funny faces. And she grabbed it and she goes, "Daddy, you're not doing it right. You're not holding it at the right angle." And I said, "Oh God, this is scary that my 6-year-old knows how to hold the phone at the right angle to get the most use of what's going on." But thank you everybody for jumping in. Thank you for jumping on Blab. Thank you for jumping in on the Periscopes as well. We do this show every single week. It seems like we've been doing it for 2 years, but it's a little bit less than 2 years of doing this show as well as we co-host a podcast. I almost knocked my podcast microphone off the table. But big shout out to our sponsors, SAP, who not only is sponsoring this show, but they're also the reason that hashtag SB50Disrupt is up there in the corner. So, Daniel, we might have people listening going, what is that SB50Disrupt and why is it with Cloud Talk? So before we get into question number one, and Kristen Cardos throws it out there, give people a little update on SB50Disrupt, if you don't mind.
I do not mind. So Brian and I will be visiting the Fan Energy Zone at Super Bowl City, sponsored by SAP next week, where we're going to be broadcasting live 20 Blab shows with leading innovators from SAP, IBM, Deloitte, Capgemini, iTelligence, and a number of analysts from Forrester, analysts from IDC, Patrick Moorhead from More Insights and Strategy. So we're going to have an amazing number of shows. And then, Brian, you and I are going to be walking around Super Bowl City as well, strapped to our Facebook Live, Periscopes, maybe with a new GoPro camera. We'll see if that ends up working out. Not only letting people join our shows, the 20 shows that you can find on the link that Kristen will be sharing throughout the show, but also you will be able to see what we're doing behind the stage and what life is really like trying to broadcast 4 shows a day and stream all day long. And yes, sometimes from afar it looks glamorous, and I tell you the topics are going to be a blast, Brian, but you and I, by Saturday morning of next week, are going to be absolutely wiped out. But these shows are going to be all about digital disruption, technology, innovation, change management, big data, mobility. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to almost be like watching 20 Cloud Talks in a week. Except
it will, and really cool guests. It's kind of, why are we doing 4 a day? It seems as if it's like 4 quarters in a football game.
Yes, we stuck that in there, right, Brian? And not to mention a pregame and a postgame show, and a halftime show.
Postgame show, halftime, maybe even a little playoff extra content there at the end of the week if we are so lucky to do some additional things going on. So I'm excited. And today we're talking collaboration, the key to digital disruption. And, the topic that we're kind of bringing to the Super Bowl Fan Energy Zone is digital disruption. But you brought up GoPro. And for those that don't realize, Periscope announced this week that GoPro now syncs to your, if you're using the GoPro 4, it actually syncs to your Periscope feeds. And I can tell you, the experiences that I've just viewed on Periscope in the 3 days or 2 days that this collaboration, this partnership has existed, has really blown my mind. I've seen helicopter live streams. I've seen people doing 360 and backflips on a snowboard pipe at the X game using their GoPro that's strapped to their head. And that to me is the true essence of collaboration. And I think it's exciting. So I'm going to jump into question number 1 and throw it out there. What factor does disruption play in the innovation of tomorrow?
Wow. Disruption and the innovation of tomorrow, Brian. You know what? I think it's a question that I'd like to say it's the first time we answer, but we talk about this a lot, and we talk about how every day, right, there's small and large disruption. I want to talk about, because this topic is so big and we could go so many directions with it, Brian, I want to talk about micro disruption and micro innovation. And so what I think is going on right now is every day is different than the last. And I just want everybody to kind of go back and think about this in your mind, right? What we expect to change from one day to the next versus what we used to expect, like in our lives, in our businesses. We say this sometimes, but doesn't one day sometimes, Brian, feel like an eternity? Like we used to go through this period of time, like where we would pitch new business to somebody and you would think, oh, this process is going to take a month. Or you would be out applying for a job and you go, you know what, I'm in the job hunt. It's going to be 2, 3, 4, 5 months. But we expect everything to happen immediately now. We send out a resume. We want to know, did they get it? Are we going to reply? When am I going to get the interview? You send out a proposal or a question to a customer. It's like, I want to know right now. I want an answer right now. Are they going to buy? Are they not going to buy? Are we going to do business? Are we not going to do business? And I think that's kind of what's going on and how disruption is changing everything, is that we want everything right now. It's sort of how the Netflix model, which we commonly discuss when we talk about disruption, broke the rental store model for movies. It was the fact that with the flip of a switch, we went from needing to get in our car and go out and get something that we didn't want to have to go out in our car and get, right? How many times do you end up sitting on the sofa, Brian, and you're like, I wish I could just watch this movie now. I really don't feel like getting up and going to the movie store. They fixed that problem. And I think that's what we are right now. We're in this state of immediacy, and disruption is fostering innovation because people want right now, right here, wherever they are. They just don't want to have to go out.
No, yeah, and I think that's also something that's really important when we're talking about just kind of the factor of where disruption plays in innovation, because, I talk about it a lot we talk about Uber, but really Uber didn't invent anything, right? They disrupted a process that was old. And I think a lot of the innovation we're seeing now is, like you said, Netflix, and we can talk about even, smaller things where we're just taking what we've already done and rethinking it, asking the question again, is this honestly the very best thing that we can do? Is this the best way we can accomplish certain things? So I actually think of disruption now as less as reinvention and more of the idea that we're no longer okay. Because like status quo is a funny thing, because really, if we're reinventing the way that we're live streaming has only existed for 10 years. So you don't always have to reinvent something that was like started in 1950, right? It's the idea now of even reinventing things to start at the beginning of time, the beginning of what technology kind of fits into our world, and like right now I'm dual broadcasting. I have Periscope going here. We have Blab going here. I have the TweetDeck up for Twitter conversations. And all of this to me is, how do I bring all of this content to my audience so they can consume it where they want? Well, that's no different than our show that we did at the beginning where we just had it on a Twitter chat, because really live streaming like this was what we used. Google Hangouts was our platform, but it didn't have the interaction and the engagement that we see on Blab today. So I think of this as kind of really exciting. And I can tell you, SAP is the headline sponsor of our SB50 Disrupt, and they collaborated and are willing to embrace this idea of Blab. I mean, think about it. Blab is a startup that has not been around for a year, yet the biggest sporting event in America, and with one of the largest sponsors of that sporting event, is embracing this this startup and this technology, because it's about community and it brings the best technology and the best people to the audience in the best way. And to me is the factor of disruption. I believe disruption and collaboration are probably the biggest factors of the innovation of tomorrow. But I love the comments here. Everybody, thank you for commenting in the comments. If you want to comment on Twitter, use the hashtag Cloud Talk on Twitter. But we love the comments and questions. I love it. Shout out to Roberto Blake. He says it's not about reinventing. You can literally just give something a tune-up or add on. And how true is that?
Yeah, I would add even to that too. It's collaboration and it's experiences, right? And we talk about this on the radio shows when we talked a lot about experience, Brian. But the Uber experience is the difference between that and a taxi. For most of us, it's just about getting from point A to point B, right? And that's so often what these little bits of innovation is. I shared an article the other day about the GoPro and the live streaming integration, right? Timing can be so important in disruption. I shared something about it. Someone, in some person who knows more than anybody about technology responded to me and said, oh no, you've been able to do this. And it's on a platform I've never even heard of, and I'm not as quite as tied to live streaming as you are. But the point is, like, well, they've been able to do this for 5 years on this other platform over here with a GoPro. And my whole point was, yeah, but nobody cared about that. And that's why nobody's talking about it. So it was about GoPro and Periscope meeting the market at the right time when these two trends were both extremely hot. And they're adding an element to it, Brian, that's so important, is that one problem I've seen with live streaming that's kind of held it out from the masses is I have to do this. I have to walk around like this, okay? And I'm staring and I'm walking around staring at my phone. And yes, some people understand what I'm doing and the rest of the world probably thinks I'm weird. But you know what? All of a sudden you change that, right, to that first dimension person, right? The snowboarder going down the mountain, the extreme bikers, what has made Red Bull and GoPro and that all so cool. And now you just take that back to life and say, go experience life with me. The ultimate live voyeur is that I could take a high quality camera, a durable camera. I could strap it to the arm of my backpack, walk around, talk to you, live life. But instead of you staring at my face, which again, maybe you'd like, but you know what? You get to see the world through my eyes. And that, I think, for a lot of people out there makes the experience even better.
Well, you know, and I think something you said it on our radio interview that you and I were on earlier today. You were talking about, you know, the anti-FOMO, right? Or not really the anti-FOMO, but like FOMO with a strategy. And, you know, I no longer think real time or the innovation of a product is as important now as the right time. I mean, let's face it, there's been 10 apps for live streaming from your mobile phone in the last 5 years that came out before any of the technology that I use every day now. The problem became it wasn't great for our cell phone networks. Our culture, our people weren't used to talking to our phones and being confident about it. The idea of community for a brand was not as important as it is today. So I actually think the idea of the right time for the perfect disruption, the perfect innovation is more important than anything else. And how do you find out that right time? Well, I think that kind of leads us to the next question where, you know, where should small businesses, medium-sized businesses start? Because right now they're telling us, okay, Brian, you and Dan are talking about disruption. You're talking about all this new tech. Well, where do we start? And I think the question comes in, and kind of the reason I phrased it this way is, do they start focusing on collaboration? Do they start focusing on community? Or do they start with innovation first? And I'd love to hear your thoughts. The audience that's out there listening and engaging, love to hear your thoughts on where you think people should start, maybe where you've started and your lessons have been learned. Because I think right now where small businesses need to start is probably more important than anything else, because I think too often we're starting with the wrong success metrics as well as the wrong strategy. So what do you think, Daniel?
Well, I'm going to actually toss it back to you because I want to build off of your answer a little bit here, Brian. But I guess what I want to point out clearly is I think you know where I'm going to come from here is I'm going to say it's unique to every business. But I want to see if you have a more universal approach.
Well, you know, I think the idea of, you know, I use these taglines, these two taglines where I think, you know, the future of innovation is collaboration. But I also say the future of business is community. And I actually think it all starts with community. And the reason I say that is because when you picture community, I ask everybody who's listening to this, watching right now, when you picture community, do you picture people or technology? Because if you think of innovation, we think of technology, we think of very cool gadgets. When you think of collaboration, I start thinking of Slack, Jive, Yammer, all of these tools that drive collaboration. When I think of community, I think of people. And so I really firmly believe that community is the heart. Because great brands are great because they have great people. And for great technology and innovation to happen, you have to have great people willing to work and make those things happen. For great collaboration to happen, it's really freaking hard. And here we're going to drop my 3 T's because it's not a show without 3 T's. But, you know, for collaboration to really work, you have to have trust, you have to have training, and you have to have tools. Well, to have trust, you have to have a great community. To have training, you have to have a community that understands the importance that training is a full-time job, not a one-time event. And then technically, for the tools to be correctly, you have to understand innovation and things that are coming down the pipe. So for me, community, internal, external, and global, community is the number one focus for all small businesses.
Yeah, I think you have to, I'll agree with that, but you have to be very realistic about what community is, because community can be a little bit overstated or understated depending on your brand. Who's the consumer of your brand? And so, you know, I take a little bit, well, Brian, you and I agree on more of this than we'd ever disagree on. The only thing I think I'd kind of start with is understanding your business and your strategy. So say, for instance, your community is a micro community, right? You have a very small number of clients and partners of people you target. You're an OEM, you're a manufacturer. Your plan for building community is going to be completely different than, say, a company like Blab or GoPro or SAP, who's really pushing out the entire world, and everybody could be a consumer of their product, right? If you're making a part that goes inside of a ball bearing machine for a plastics company, right, your role of community is different than the role of, like I said, a consumer product. So I always say start with your own business, your own objectives, and understand what you need. But still, having said that, you need to understand what your community is, and then you need to embrace that group. You need to say, who are the people upstream and downstream? Who's my customer? Who are my partners? Who are my employees? And that is your ultimate first community too. And then you can collaborate with them. And what I mean is it could be 3, 4, 5 total companies or people if you're a really small business or a super targeted business, or it could be 3 billion people if you have a consumer product that touches everybody in the world. And you need to know who that is and then start there. Because the biggest problem I see is a lot of times, I read this earlier, I think it was Joe Pulizzi, right? One of the godfather of content marketing. I'll give him a little extra cred. And he said that if you think your content marketing is for everybody, then it's for nobody. And what I guess I'm saying there is if you think your community is everybody, then you have no idea who you're actually reaching out to. And you are so far away from doing anything meaningful with disruption, transformation, or innovation that you need to go back to the drawing board, start over and say, who do we want to be a part of our brand?
No, I love that. And I love the way you went with that. And, actually one of my old bosses, Brent Schlenker, is in here, and Brent works in the training space for Litmos and really focuses a lot on training. And we used to joke back when we worked together at a data center company where, so many brands and so many companies tell us they care about community and they trust their employees. And then you ask them where they're going to spend their budget for training. And it's always they train their community, their customers, their prospects, their partners. Well, they forget about training their employees. And your first community, the community that matters the most to your business, are the ones that are already on your payroll. And I think when a business starts the other way and they say, well, we don't trust our employees, but we're going to train and build trust with our clients and our partners, you've got it all wrong. You've started in the wrong way, because not only will that not scale, but it will not last very long. And I think today that is one of those things that we can't underestimate, where training your first, I think you said it, or maybe Ursula said it on our show, your very first customer is your employees. Your very first most important community are your employees. The reason you're successful and your business is innovating are your employees. And I think that is something, I'm a little bit of an employee advocate junkie, so I guess that I lean a little bit more heavy on that. But I really think when it comes to these things is the reason certain people put X employer or X previously worked at, Ursula used to work at Apple, these people that have worked at previous companies that are proud to talk about where they worked at is because that company had a great community that allowed them to be great innovators. Even when they left, they're still proud about where they work at. I think that to me is one of those things that's super exciting. So I'm going to change the topic real quick to question 3. Thank you, Kristen Cardos, for all the, connecting everybody in the chat room and getting all the questions out there. I love all the questions flying in across the board. So I'm going to throw up question 3 in there, Daniel, if you want to jump to that one.
Yeah, absolutely. Many people out there, Brian, they talk about digital disruption, and it's a hot topic, and we kind of use the same couple of core examples all the time, right? We talk Uber, we talk Netflix, and it's because it's a relatable thing that most people have experienced. But when it comes to disruption, maybe outside of those, are there any that really come to your mind? Any that you could really talk about or share that are really killing it with disruption?
I think now it's kind of interesting because I think of it as brands that are no longer marketing their product, but they're actually marketing a completely different experience. And Red Bull comes to mind, right? Like the X Games are going on. I am not a drinker of Red Bull. I am trying to get another energy drink company to sponsor me. Hint, hint. But Red Bull has created such a media empire of amazing content and just experience and giving me access to people and places and things that I had never had before, that I am a Red Bull fan. I love Red Bull. And how crazy is that I can love a brand with a product that I don't drink? It's not one that, and I think Red Bull is one of those ones where they're embracing digital disruption in the sense of willing to do all kinds of digital content, digital media, digital, experiences, sponsoring events that seem to have nothing to do with their target audience. But because it has you talking about it. You see that logo everywhere. And when you go to the case, you're immediately drawn to Red Bull for, not because you think you have wings, but because it's creating such an amazing, different digital concept and experience. And then another one that I like to think about is, I give a lot of love to Dunkin' Donuts. And the reason I do is their app changes my experience as a customer. As a customer, I use the Dunkin' Donuts app to pay for my food, to get coupons, to gain points, to find locations, all that stuff that we always already get. But you know what? The fact that it helps me find a Dunkin' Donuts or reminds me, hey, you just drove by one. Did you get your Dunkin' Donuts? Remember, it's 99-cent coffee day because the Washington Capitals won, and you get a 99-cent any size iced coffee. To me, that is embracing digital, embracing mobile, embracing the social and knowing your customer to where I end up buying and spending more money on Dunkin' than I ever intended to because they provide such a great digital experience for me. So what about you, Daniel? What are some of the ones that come up to you? I'd love to hear other people tagging some brands out there that really get them excited about digital disruption.
Yeah, I'm going to actually talk about a couple of brands that they're probably both very well known, but maybe not very well known in this circle of disruption conversation. The first one I'm going to talk about is a company called Redfin. Redfin is a real estate company, and I don't know how many of you are familiar with kind of the new model of buying real estate, but in the past, you used to go to Century 21 or Remax, and you would connect with somebody, right? And you would ask a realtor to set you up. It used to be like magazines you'd flip through. And then what happened is you had to have a realtor digitally connect you to like a portal, and you would log in, and they would show you houses. Sites like Redfin have actually created using geolocation, have using filters and systems to basically create an app that you can go in and just touch on the street, on the block, and you see every house that's available. It creates values, imagery, using 3D. They're starting to incorporate. You can sell your own home on it. And it's sort of disrupting a market that I think has long been sort of slow to evolve because a home is such a personal thing. But where I think things are going, virtual and augmented reality, I think they've really set the stage to completely disrupt the home buying. And I would not be surprised to see traditional real estate companies that we have known very well for a very long time be supplanted in the coming years by companies like what these folks at Redfin are doing. I'm going to give you one other one, and that was DraftKings. And I think talk about seeing, and equally FanDuel, the whole daily fantasy sports industry completely disrupted. I mean, Vegas is on their knees. I mean, legislation, any state that had a large sports book or revenue from sports book or off-track betting is being hugely disrupted by this new trend. But they basically said, look, we know people love sports. SB50 disrupt. We know that people love to bet and to make their games more interesting. Fantasy sports is huge, but you know what? That's a whole season long, and people would like to have more chances to be involved in more opportunities. You can call it gambling, call it what you want, but the long and the short of it is people watch more football or more anything when they have something connected to it, when something is at stake. So whether you're playing a free or a 25-cent game, or you're playing a $100, $100,000 game, and you can play them all on DraftKings. I think that's extremely disruptive. I think they basically said, we'll let you bet on your sport, whatever your sport is, or we'll let you participate from your home, and we'll make every game more interesting. And just based on all the press they're getting and all the legislation going around, they have been disrupted. They are seeing the same kind of pain that Uber is seeing in the compliance and licensing industry right now, because what they did was that impactful on the marketplace.
You know what else is really cool about that example is they learned from other people. I played poker professionally for a couple of years, and the poker community and online poker really disrupted the heck out of the idea of gambling and the idea I could in college people were making $1 million online playing a game that was poker that used to be something you had to hang out with your dad to do in the basement, smoking a cigar and taking a sip of his beer when he wasn't looking, right? Like that was, and they took that and they made that into the online space. But really what FanDuel started to realize was like, and this is what we talk about all the time, Daniel. I think this is the new, we want to consume stuff where we want it, when we want it, but we also want to engage and be a part of something. The reason that we're going to SB50 Disrupt, the reason we're going to be at the Super Bowl and bridging this gap and bringing, we're going to give people an experience. We're going to do blabs from the Fan Energy Zone. I'm going to be at Blab headquarters at some point. We might even be in some of these innovation companies that are in San Francisco. We might be periscoping from their innovation lab or their data hub. And the question goes back, it's like, wait, why are you doing this? Why is SAP so involved in connecting this conversation? And to me, it comes down to this new idea, this new concept. And it's really like what FanDuel said is we want to provide the best possible knowledge experience we can where you want it, when you want it. So you're embracing mobile. The fact that you can do it while, second screen. I mean, when's the last time you watched a TV show? Like other than Game of Thrones for me, there is no show that I watch without my phone in my hand. And the reason Game of Thrones is because I want to watch that show twice because I'm so in love with that show, but I don't have to watch it a third time if I miss something. So I'm like, okay, I just got to put my phone in airplane mode. So I think this idea like second screen and understanding that, I truly think that it's kind of a game changer when you're looking on how you consume content. So in this my idea, we're going to go to Daniel. You and I are going to arrive in San Francisco for Super Bowl week on Sunday. When you think about Super Bowl 50 this year, this is the Super Bowl 50. What comes to mind that didn't come to mind in 2010? So let's go back 6 years. 6 years ago, when you were talking about the Super Bowl, what comes to mind that today around the Super Bowl that maybe didn't 6 years ago?
Well, I think the first thing is the connection between the community of the Super Bowl in real time. Now, 6 years ago, when you watched the Super Bowl, yes, Twitter was alive, and I think there was a small community of people that were really starting to embrace Twitter. But how are people really connecting and engaging and talking about the Super Bowl then? You know, I think the evolution in 6 years of community and conversation has escalated so much. People used to be more excited about like the commercials, right? The brand bowl. Do you remember that was the biggest discussion of the Super Bowl every year was it's brand bowl again. Who's going to have the best commercials? And that was like, it was like in a vacuum because the Super Bowl event was basically discussed from about 2 hours to 3 hours before it went on air, broadcasted, until maybe an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours after it broadcasted. And then the media and the journalists would write about it. But other than that, it kind of came and fizzled as quickly as it arrived, right? And now with this content, think about this, Brian. We've been actually planning and involved in talking about Super Bowl and community on social platforms for 4 and 5 and 6 months. Some of this is that real-time marketing effect where all companies are looking at how do they tie to global events? How do you tie technology to a global event like the Super Bowl in ways that aren't just commercials, right? And now what we're doing is we're actually saying that community is all willing to huddle around something like the big game. But they're also willing to huddle around the fact that they have a passion for the big game, and they also want to discuss other things that are important to them. So it goes back to kind of that Simon Sinek, right? People want to engage and associate with people who believe what they believe. Well, we love the Super Bowl, and we love technology, and technology is now enabling us to love both of those things together for a longer period of time. Oh, and by the way, create this evergreen content that really doesn't just have to do with the day of the Super Bowl, but it's going to go and last as long as people are still interested in these topics.
Well, you know what? And I would say, as a diehard sports fan and as a fan of the team that only has six Super Bowl rings and no one else does, I will always say that I have enjoyed probably more Super Bowls than any other fan since we have 6 wins, although 4 of them did exist before I was born. The idea of the Super Bowl 6 years ago to me was still about the teams on the field more so than the experience and everything that it meant as like the culmination of the battle that is the NFL. And to me, one of the things that I truly love about the new Super Bowl experience is it's about everything that involves around sports, around digital. The idea that the commercials were the most exciting thing. Well, the reason commercials were the most exciting thing is because not everybody loves football. Not everybody loves the 2 teams around the field. Well, now, I saw somebody brought up Snapchat, and somebody was bringing up the idea that these music events that are going on around the Super Bowl are just as exciting. And I think that's actually how brands should treat everything. The reason that SAP and Intel have their names giantly placed on the logo of the stadium where the Super Bowl's at this year is not because just for word of mouth marketing and for all the pictures to be explained in it, but it's like how many beacons technology exist in that stadium. I was talking to a brand the other day, and they actually have a tool that it's a mobile app that you can get your food delivered to your seat in your stadium, anywhere in any stadium. You just click on it and say, this is the food I want. It's delivered to you in the seat so you don't miss the experience. They're providing a service that used to mean, especially for me, growing up in Pittsburgh, having season tickets, my seats were the very top. It was about 600 rows. We are the highest seat in the entire thing. For you to go down and get a hot chocolate and come back, you missed half of a quarter of the experience you were trying to create. So I actually think of in 2016, the biggest difference for me is the experience and and I think I give a shout out to I think it was Ian that said it, immersed in everything that exists around this amazing event. And the immersion is because of technology, and it's because of thinking much bigger than just the 4 quarters of the football game that exists on the field.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Brian, is the immersion and choice. I think that's another big shift we're going through is we have the privilege of choice. We have a choice of how we consume it, when we consume it. Of course, it's live, but, a lot of people don't watch the game live. If you're a real football fan, you'd probably be happier to record the game than actually watch the whole fiasco, right? It's now about culture. It's about music. It's about globalization. And, the Super Bowl is no longer just a domestic event, right? In 1985, when I was 4, and the Chicago Bears won the Super Bowl, the game was about really food and football. That was it. And it was, like I said, it was about a 4-hour, 5-hour, and it was for football people. It was for football people and fans in the city. Now it's about everything. Everybody's trying to associate it with it in any part of the world you're in. The Super Bowl is known everywhere, Brian. I mean, there's really nowhere you could go. We talk to people every day. We have clients in multiple countries and multiple continents. And you say, hey, we're doing this cool event for the Super Bowl. Do you think anybody's like, what's the Super Bowl? No, everybody knows what the Super Bowl is. And I think you go back 10 or 15 years, and I don't necessarily know that that's so true. And I think the proliferation of media, especially social media, has been a big catalyst in turning the Super Bowl into something that's much more about the experience of the fans and much less about the game of football.
Yeah, you know what? I would wonder. I would probably argue to bet that fantasy football and social media are probably the biggest factors in the change of the Super Bowl, which is kind of crazy if you think about it, because fantasy football allowed us to care about games we never used to care about and be part of every game, even when our team is eliminated. Like poor Cleveland Browns fans haven't, and I always take jabs at them because I'm a Steeler fan, they haven't had something to cheer for after October in their entire existence. But when they have a fantasy football team and they draft good players like on the Steelers, they have someone to cheer for through the entire season. And I'm saying that kind of as a joke, but it's this idea now where how do I love that the term immerse, and shout out to everyone on the comments. The comments are amazing. Chris Strubb said, give it 4 years. We're going to have Periscope 4.0. We're going to be able to watch the entire game from Cam Newton's helmet, right? Which would be interesting. I'd be like yelling at him, slide. But
totally going to happen. It's so going to happen.
I mean, we got the GoPro already. The GoPros. I mean, I was watching a GoPro last night of a guy he's in the snowboard competition with his GoPro attached to his chest. And I used to X Games. I'm a snowboarder. I love extreme sports, but I'm not that great at it. But I really respect their talent. And I'm watching that going, oh my God, I have a new love for this sport because of the experience it was created. And I'm able to have conversations with people in the Periscope while we're all watching this together. And really, what did that mean? I have a new community, a new experience, a new vantage point of a sport that I've loved for 15 years, right? Like, how crazy is that in the disruption side? So, Daniel, I want to jump to the next question because I want to throw it because it's definitely this is my question to the Daniel Newman, author of 4 books, probably 10 books by the next couple of years. What role does marketing play in digital disruption success? Because I think everything we just talked about here has been marketed very well compared to a lot of things like pre-fantasy football that had kind of a disruption feel, but was not marketed very well. Well,
I'm gonna actually add one point to the last question. It's gonna segue right into the question about marketing and disruption. So next week when we're at that fan energy zone that SAP is putting on, there is a augmented reality experience where you're like it's like a quarterback experience, and you can stand in the pocket and feel the immersion of pressure. And that experience, for instance, is something that really allows people to live life in through the eyes of the quarterback. Have you ever said that? How many times do we sit in our armchair and go, I could have made that throw? You have no idea how fast this game is. You have no idea how quickly things are moving around you. And what I'm saying is just for a moment, thanks to technology, thanks to immersion and augmented reality and where things are going, we are going to have that opportunity to experience it. It's starting with things like streaming and GoPro, that we can live the life of an extreme snowboarder. We can live the life of the quarterback of your favorite team. And yes, I will say one more thing. I will say this, and it's a maybe a provocative statement, Brent, but I think fantasy football has made the NFL. I think fantasy football has made the NFL. Okay, so running forward, though, marketing driving disruption. I think marketing, as we know it today, is doomed. It's doomed. I wrote a book that was the title of it, so a little self-promotion there. But marketing as a whole, the way we know marketing, the way we've done marketing, it's over. Everything we need to start doing needs to be putting the customer, the employee, the people's experiences as the story of your brand. However you have to do that, it's going to change, because right now we don't buy Starbucks because of a Starbucks ad. We don't buy Netflix because of a Netflix ad. We're not buying Apple because of an Apple ad. None of the companies, I know these are all big companies, but none of these big successful companies have become what they've become because of their advertising. You didn't start using Uber because of an Uber ad. You didn't start using Airbnb because of an Airbnb ad. In fact, I sometimes think they have so much money, they don't know what to do. So they do ads, but they're like, I don't even know if we need to do this, but we'll go ahead and throw some media out there. I think what's happening now is we started using Uber because someone told us about it. Someone shared a code with you. You saw it on, you saw your friends on Facebook or Twitter or live streaming talking about it, right?
Well, and real quick, like an example, like Chris Strub just said it, I'd buy a Monster because of Brian Fanzo. Well, like the Funky Fairy who is in here, who's in the live streaming community, a small business in the UK, he literally sent me a Snapchat and said, Brian, I never even knew Monster Energy was a good drink, but because I've watched you drink it and talk about it, I decided to buy a case and now I love it. And you're right. There's Monster Energy commercials everywhere. They're all over social. But the reason he did it is because I'm drinking it on live stream. So
you're going to die from drinking that. But yes.
No, sugar-free, carb-free. I have to tell everybody. I drink
It's not the sugar. It's the chemicals. And you know what? I've got like a whole case of Monster Rehab in my garage. So I'm saying that as a guy who drinks coffee, puts Splenda in it. Again, I'm on the back nine. I'm sure of it. I'm 34, but I'm like at least 3/4 of the way to the end. But the point, you're so right, is that we basically, I'm not the FOMO guy, but FOMO is in a lot of ways the future of marketing. It's FOMO in the same law of disruption of innovation curve. It's FOMO that I get on early. It's FOMO that I get on at the regular time. It's FOMO that I get on late, but it's still FOMO. It's still, I want the latest flat screen. I want the newest Mac. I want the newest Android device. Fear of missing out, Darcy. I want whatever it is that other people have, other people are doing, other people are seeing. I want to drive a cool car because my friends have it. I want to move into a bigger house because I was in my friend's fancy house. I want to, drink Starbucks because everybody around me has a cup of Starbucks and God, that looks good. So I think the future of marketing is about how do we put potential buyers into the experiences in the same way that the consumer brands have done it. And since I'm more of a B2B guy that's in the tech space, it's a little harder to do that with a platform. It's a little harder to do that with your ERP software like SAP. That's something SAP is trying to figure out. But the bottom line is I want to use the technology that they're using, right? So an old SAP advertisement I used to see in the O'Hare Airport all the time, Brian, was mid-size. It was a mid-size advertisement. It would say, Porsche runs SAP. And it would say, I like Porsche. They run SAP. I want to run SAP. And what I'm saying is, so they were starting to get that early, but then how do we use tech to immerse people in that experience and not only make it something they read, but something they can live?
Well, and you think about it that way. I love that. And I think marketing, the reason I never wanted to major in marketing in college, and this is just a shot at probably my misunderstanding of marketing before I went to college, and I didn't go to college that long ago. I was a freshman in 1999, was I thought marketers were the ones that gave me all the fluff. And I thought the ones in technology, the ones that used everything with data to make things work. And I think we've now completely shifted. So 1999 to 2016, I think marketers are now more enabled by data and are able to be better because of data. And the interesting thing about that whole data conversation now is we now are getting so much data that marketers can actually market the right stuff to the right people at the right time. And how crazy is that, right? I mean, it's kind of like a new age thinking. I agree with you that we're getting in this new concept of marketing. I mean, we're getting in the new concept of community. Let's face it. How many brands like SAP, who sponsors this show that we're doing right now, would sponsor a show that has no one from SAP in the two boxes? There's no SAP handle in every single tweet, and it's not SAP branded, like we don't have a tattoo on our forehead. But the idea that SAP is supporting the community and allowing us to facilitate thought leadership and engagement and bring all these conversations together, that's a new way of marketing that other brands just don't get, because it's saying, wait a second, why is not all this driven to my owned media? Why is this not all about me? Well, last time I checked, if it was all about you, the old way of doing it, that's the reason those shows people didn't tune in and that the experience wasn't that same one. So I'm going to open up the seat down below, so feel free to hit the call-in button. We're going to bring a couple people, but I want to go to the last question, and it's kind of a personal one, Daniel. It's a little bit of our own little, for those that don't know, SB50 Disrupt is definitely a passion project that we are super excited to team up with all these great brands. So SB50 Disrupt is going to be all these blabs that Daniel talked about from the Super Bowl of Fan Energy Zone. We're going to have Periscopes going on. We're probably going to do some Facebook Live. I believe the team from Mevi has even said they're going to be there. We got GoPro possibilities. We're going to have virtual reality. We're going to show you guys what the Fan Energy Zone looks like. We're going to be at Blab headquarters, all of these things. But, for me as a Steeler fan, as soon as my Steelers got eliminated, I went from being super excited about my Steelers being in the Super Bowl to being super excited about being a part of something that is going to change the game when it comes to how we bring technology to the Super Bowl and the Super Bowl experience and the fan energy zone. So, Daniel, the last question is a pretty simple one. What are you most excited about for next week, SB50 Disrupt, including Cloud Talk from the fan energy zone?
Well, Brian, first of all, I'm extremely excited about seeing you in that Jets jersey. Have you picked that up yet? And for all of you out that love stories, right, this goes back to about 3 Cloud Talks ago where I said to Brian, and this is the point when the Steelers were still in it, and all the Steeler fans are eternally optimistic. They have won, I think, the most or second most Super Bowls of all time, right? So that gives them reason, But the point is, I said to Brian, I said, look, let's have a little fun with this. If the Steelers win the Super Bowl or are in the Super Bowl, I will wear any basically jersey for at least one show that you want me to. I'm a Bears fan, so that would be hard for me.
You guys were eliminated months ago. We couldn't have
years ago. But the point is that you said, okay, I'll take that bet. Well, it wasn't but maybe a week later that Broken Ben and Antonio Busted Brown, who, by the way, carried my fantasy team, and I cheered for him every week of this year, not because I like the Steelers, but because I like the experience of associating myself to Antonio Brown, who's a stud. But the point is that you lost. You need to put the jersey on. So while I am most excited about the idea of 20 shows with some amazing leaders in the business community and doing it all on streaming and proving that B2B and technology can use consumer technology like this to make their message, I have to say I am really kind of excited to see you in that jersey. It's going to be a very awkward moment. I plan to do a lot of streaming, a lot of tweeting, a lot of images, a lot of tagging, and just getting this out there. I may even do a sponsored post in your name, just because I have to find some way to spend about an extra $20 or $30 shaming you into your New York Jets state of mind.
Yes, and I will own it. I'm a man that will own my bets and own, especially the Steelers side. I also like the idea. I mean, think of it this way. We're using Periscope, which is teamed with Twitter. We're using Blab, that's a startup. And we're teaming with brands. Let's just put the brands out there real quick. It's SAP, IBM, Capgemini, Intelligence. I mean, these are like the biggest of name brands that you're gonna, Deloitte. So those are 5 brands that are doing, right? So we have Deloitte, SAP, IBM, Capgemini, and Intelligence that are each going to take their own day of conversations around digital disruption. Those brands have bought in to the community and technology that other brands are even looking at calling a passing fad, or they can't make it work, and these other pieces. So for me, I'm extremely excited at the opportunity to demonstrate the power of collaboration. And I think that is something we can't underestimate. So we get about 15 minutes left. We purposely kind of front-loaded this episode, this show, so you guys can jump in the hot seat, ask yourselves some questions, and bring some of that information to us. So I think Austin is the first one up, and feel free to hit that jump in the seat button, you guys, if you would like to. What's up, Austin? How's it going, man?
Awesome. So you guys are talking about digital disruption. I'm wondering, what are your thoughts with Pinterest advertising towards Google? Because personally, I think Pinterest is massively disrupting Google's image search.
Ooh, I like it. I like where you went there. What say you, Daniel? You had something on that
first?
Well,
I'll jump in. I mean, Pinterest for me and the core of what we do is the B2B tech community, Austin. So, Pinterest has been a little slower to adopt, but I see visual disruption. So I've been saying for a long time, marketing will go visual. And I don't think there's a company that has a better platform for your visual marketing than what Pinterest today is doing. I also will acknowledge a second thing. I use Pinterest constantly to find visuals for the content we're doing for brands. So, I mean, while I don't know about the advertising, and Brian, I don't know if you can chime in a little bit more. What I will say is that one thing Pinterest did get right, and I think Instagram got this right too, is that people want to be quickly captivated with visual, and they want less text. And I'm saying, even if you look at the Twitter brand identity that's going on right now, I think it was because Twitter has never really fully made visual the core of its engine. And I think if it had done that sooner, it actually avoided some of the disruption it's faced.
No, yeah, and I love the question, mostly because I think of this way. I think of Snapchat is changing the way advertising even exists, because it's no longer about disrupting my experience. It's about creating content that is within my experience. And as much as I run Best Buy under the bus all the time on the show, I'm going to give them tons of props, because Best Buy at CES, there was an entire CES Snapchat story around drones. And the Best Buy ad came into my story, and it was drones flying around inside of a Best Buy. And then it comes around and it flies down, and then the ad pops up and says, "We sell drones too," in a 10-second piece of content that was the same way you consume everything else on Snapchat. And then the next one was user-generated content of the drones at CES. Well, guess what? Right then, I forgot that I was watching an ad, and I loved it. I almost wanted to go back and watch it a second time. And so I think of Pinterest. I think of Instagram. I mean, I would challenge everybody. Put the word mobile in your search on Instagram a couple times, and then watch the amount of ads you get for new apps. My new app discovery used to be my FOMO of Flipboard, RSS feeds, blog reading, YouTube watching. I download more apps because of ads on Instagram than anything else. And I probably have done 10 in the last 2 weeks. And it's crazy because they're serving me up ad content and visual content in an easy manner. Because guess what? Where are you at when you're consuming Instagram? Your phone. Where can you download apps the best way? Your phone, right? Before, if you give me a link to download it on my Twitter feed, it's going to open to some mobile browser, right? It's not even going to give me my phone. It's not even going to give me the app store. But Instagram, when I click that button, it opens the app store for me to download. So I think of it as keep it simple, stupid. Pinterest, I think, is going to disrupt Google image search. I think, look at it this way. Periscope's disrupting YouTube's handle on search as well, because now you're doing 50 hours of video a day, 50 million hours of video a day on Periscope. That's now going to compete with the search engine that lives on in the YouTube space, especially because we just heard the rumor that Periscopes are now going to live on forever eventually, where the user that's doing a Periscope gets to decide how long that content exists. It can be a year, it can be 5 days. So imagine that. I think if pictures tell 1,000 words, live interactive video is going to tell more, and I think Pinterest is on that.
The only thing I'd chime in there, though, Brian, is I do think we have to be a little bit realistic about is Google controls what you find on Google. So in terms of the mobile stuff you're mentioning, Austin, and where it drives you to an app and you're searching and you're using it in-app to find content and be engaged to advertisements, I think you're going to win. When people are still using traditional search, though, I think it's going to be a little bit slower because I don't know. Maybe I sound naive to say this, but I'm pretty sure Google wants you to stay within their properties. I'm pretty sure they want you to find their images, and I'm pretty sure they want you to find their videos because they do own YouTube. So I do think there's a little bit of that going on. Now, talk about something disruptive, Brian, is, I shared a visual this morning on my Facebook page about did you see the newest stats for Facebook user rates? And
you did.
I shared this community update, and it said 1.59 billion people are now on Facebook each month, which is almost 50% more than the most recent numbers that I'd been sharing. WhatsApp is approaching 1 billion, Messenger is approaching 1 billion, and Instagram is approaching 500 million. So people are using notifications, safety checks. They're using groups. They're using events. They're using small business pages. And I guess the reason I point this out is you want to talk about something disruptive that's going on the internet. It's that Facebook might be the internet in years to come.
No, yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think, it's also interesting because it's a chat app. It's a Facebook. Think of it this way. I was listening to Marcus Sheridan the other day on Blab, and he was talking about with Mark Schaefer, and they were talking about, content now on Facebook. The reason that links that take you out of Facebook are no longer getting organic reach is, let's be real, Facebook wants you to stay in Facebook, just like Google and YouTube want you to stay in Google and YouTube. And I feel like that's kind of the new way of content. It's no longer about how can I get them over to my own piece of media. It's how can I create great content in that one area where I'm at to where they want more and they come to my own media, right? Like that's the great content now. And I even will say, I wonder if eventually a Facebook page link, an Instagram link ends up being the link that's probably the most popularly used, because you're then creating content there and then they're going, okay, I want more content. Where can I get that? But Austin, I love it, my friend. Thanks so much for jumping in. Cheers, brother.
Cheers.
All right. So we have one of my buddies, Mr. Social Good himself, Chris Strubb, jumping in, man who's live streamed in 50 states and Snapchatted in 50 states. We can't see him. He's apparently incognito in 50 states as well. But yeah, feel free to jump in the in the box there. I have the seat open, but I'm excited. I mean, the conversation going on in the side box here is pretty darn amazing. So thank you guys so much for tuning in like you do every week.
So what do you think about that, though, Brian? Do you think that, I've heard, I was reading something this morning, like in India, you can actually purchase Facebook-only internet, which means, because now you basically can open a browser in Facebook, right? You really never leave Facebook. Like if you're in the mobile app, you actually can experience everything through the content reading. And I think obviously they're doing that on purpose, right? I mean, what's going on is they don't want you to browse off. And now what happens, though, is you can share content. Because what was happening for a long time is you'd share links, and you saw they changed the algorithm, right? If you were sharing a link that was going to take somebody off of Facebook to read the link, they would push that down to make it less seen by less people in your network. We tested that. My friend Olivia Blanchard and I ran a bunch of different tests on that one where we put them in the highlight versus in the comments to see what would happen. But I think there's a coming time where Facebook might be something that you could just subscribe to that. That is the internet. It's a big problem in net neutrality, but it is also something that's definitely going on that could be very disruptive to the way people consume.
No, I couldn't agree more. So, Chris Strub, I was saying good things about you until I saw the outfit you're wearing, but I will leave the Cowboy Nation alone. But what say you, my friend?
Yeah, great discussion, guys. Thank you guys so much for allowing me to step in real quick. I saw, Brian, of course, was simultaneously periscoping this, so hello to his Periscope audience as well. And so my question is, as you guys were talking about Mevi and Blab and Facebook Live and creating quality content across channels, when you guys get out there, the question is, how do you balance creating the same content on different channels at the same time versus being able to engage and respond on one channel versus two channels, et cetera? So that's my question. I'll take it off air as a great radio question would be.
All right, I love it, Chris. So I'll tell you what, it's probably one of my favorite questions because I believe everything you do must have a strategy behind it, and you must understand the value you're providing. So like right now, I'm streaming on Periscope here. I let the audience know before I went live, said, hey, I'm going to be doing this show. I'm going to be give you guys behind the scenes. I won't be engaging on it, but I'm giving you guys a window in if you can't get over to Blab. Right. And then like even for our shows, we're going to do 20 Blab shows interviewing thought leaders and guests. But when we pick up Periscope, we know what the audience is. We know what the demographic is. We know what the content is and our purpose and our strategy. So we're going to give you behind the scenes. We're going to give you the pre-show. We're going to recap it where Daniel and I just banter back and forth because apparently we don't talk to each other enough on, 2 radio interviews today. This show, we have a podcast. But I think ultimately it comes down to strategically understanding the value you're providing. And I will always say there is way too much noise already. So we don't want to add to the noise. We want to stand out from the noise based on the platform we're using. But what are your thoughts there, Daniel?
Well, I think, you've made it. He had a great question because I think a lot of people are lazy sharers, right? And we can go back to something that's sort of a fundamental issue that a lot of brands have, right? Scheduling tools. So we're going to schedule the same content to go out on every channel at the same time or even at different times. And the fact is that it is just lazy. It doesn't mean that you don't want to share different or the same content on multiple channels, but the way you share it on every channel should be different. For instance, like, it being in the tech and B2B space, I am a big fan of LinkedIn. Not everybody's a big fan, but I'm a big fan. But I don't share a tweet the same way I would share it on Twitter, on LinkedIn. You have to put context around things. That's the whole purpose of being able to have a 300-word status update is that you can contextualize it. Or maybe sometimes if it's longer, it should be a post, right? You got to use the different platforms that are enabled. If you want to use Instagram or Pinterest, you should take that content and meme it or turn it into something with capturing a quote or capturing something experiential about the event. If you want to put it on video, the video is not exactly the same. Even the video, like on a Periscope, doesn't always naturally fit itself to go to YouTube. If you've got chats running up and down the screen, that's not necessarily the right way to approach an embed. Putting it on a more evergreen video platform like YouTube, it's a little more timeless because that could be an irritant. So you might have to have a separate type of video where you capture it, where you're not engaging and talking to people. You have to figure out, even if it's all video, all blog, all content, all social posting, that it's not all created equal. And you have to make sure you're connecting in a way that the people in that audience are going to be able to quickly gauge the context and the value, and if they want to be associated with it, because people's attention spans are extremely short.
No, it's funny because I've probably, in the last 2 weeks, I've probably had 30 brands reach out to me and say, Brian, you were right about Facebook Live. Facebook Live sucks. I can't get engagement. It's not working. And I've surprised every one of them, going back to them and saying, you're wrong. Facebook Live doesn't suck. you're using it incorrectly. And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm doing the same thing I do on Periscope, and nobody's doing the same engagement. I said, is your audience the same? Is their user habits the same? Last time I checked, nobody goes on Facebook today and says, I'm going to actively engage in comments back and forth, unless you have one of those people that are in your Facebook feed that are really great at commenting right back and forth. You comment almost like you used to comment on a blog, and then you come back to it when people like it or reply directly to it. So the idea –
it's asynchronous.
Right. And so the idea now is we're live streaming in the feed. The amount of people that when I live stream on Facebook go, is this real? Like, hold on, Brian, are you doing that real time? And it's because we have to educate the audience. So guess what? In the Facebook Live space, when you're creating content there, and to answer Chris Strupp's question, you actually have to educate the audience throughout the broadcast. Where on Periscope, they download this app because it allows you to comment and engage on live video. So I don't have to educate them on why you're commenting and if it's live, right? And so I think that kind of mindset when you're building out a strategy and you're understanding, and this can go on every new platform and every new tool. I was laughing, I was doing with a CRM tool, Daniel, and we were doing some work with the SAP store team, and I was watching one of the demos on the SAP store website, and I loved it because it went through and kind of walked me through what a CRM is that is connected to a more social enabled product. And I was laughing because it wasn't telling me what CRM was and then what their new features were. It was actually reframing my entire approach to what CRM is. And I think when you're doing that with any kind of content, if it's video, it's visual, you have to understand your audience, a strategy, the demographic, and then you also understand what your audience is used to doing, where that content is being consumed. If it's mobile consumption, I can tell you, because I'm a geek, 64% of my audience engages with my tweets on mobile devices. 41% of them are actually doing it from their iPhone. I actually have a heavier Android using base community on Twitter than I do iPhone. So what does that mean to me? When I drop a link for a podcast, I don't drop an iTunes link. Wait a second. That doesn't make sense, Brian. Why would you not drop an iTunes link? iTunes is the biggest podcasting platform of all of the podcasting. The reason I don't is because I know my audience, I know my demographic, and I provide a link that works on both Android and iOS, or I provide both where it's a Google Play link and it's an iOS one, because I know the content that I need to create and deliver because what my audience wants. And I think that to me is the smart side. Of course, I figured Ross and Shay would jump in and tell me that it's because I have a smart audience that are Android users. They love to pick on my iPhone fandom.
I should do a parallel, like a walk around in my room where I've got a MacBook Pro, a 27 iMac, a MacBook Air, a 21 iMac, an iPhone, an iPad. And I got the iPad. I am entrenched in Apple, but I did visit, have a little visit at the HP in campus last week, and I actually have to say I am extremely impressed with where some of these other PC platforms are going. The physical devices have really caught up. They are not like the big plastic boxes that, the ThinkPads of 5 years ago, where it was like Apple was a whole different physical experience. It's really changed. So I have to give them credit. I think disruption, even in that industry, is going to change because no longer is it so different. Now it's more about, can they make that user experience good? Because the physical experience, I think, of all the brands are really, really good. So going back, though, one last point, Brian, on the different platforms, this comes back to the topic we started with, digital disruption. And is it innovation? Is it community? Is it collaboration? And for me, it's knowing your community, where you're sharing and where you're engaging. Everybody that wants to jump on and tell you why you are wrong, right? Everybody that wants to tell you why you're sharing wrong, why you're doing your ads wrong, why you're posting in the wrong place. The only way they can really legitimately say that and get away with it is if they know your audience, if they've done the data and the analytics to know your audience, who you're trying to approach, why you're trying to approach them, how you grow your business, what your business means, what your community means to you. Otherwise, forget it. Don't listen to them. Focus on putting the content where your audience is. That will make the biggest difference.
No, I love it. So, yeah, thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you for sharing this. We always brag that we have the very best community in all of the Twitter chat blab space. So one last reminder, that hashtag SB50Disrupt, you're going to start seeing it all over your feed. You probably already started seeing it now if you're putting that hashtag out there. Do me a favor, track that hashtag, engage with that content, jump into our blabs. I promise you that if you were in this show, you're going to find 2 or 3 blabs each one of the days next week. They're going to have valuable content, unique insights. I think maybe there's one guest of all of those 20 shows that we've had on this show before. All of this new insight, new conversation, new vantage points from all these different brands live from the Super Bowl. So guys, do me a favor, check out SB50 Disrupt all week long. We're going to be doing it from San Francisco. Daniel, another awesome show. I feel like we should probably get on another call to have more conversations about this because we've spent our morning talking digital disruption. But thank you, Kristen Cardos. Thank you, SAP, for sponsoring this show as well as SB50 Disrupt. And Daniel, I will see you in San Francisco Sunday morning.
See you guys there.
Cheers.